story previously. It's about a guy who drinks a beer and ingests some mutagen that causes things to change. And that's all I'll say about that. But his apartment, what we work with is we work with location photography, so we get all these pictures from the set, and then we have to bring it to life. So there's something in the apartment, but I won't tell you what that is. And then Chris takes all of those pictures that I send him, and he starts doing his drawings. So all of that moss and mold and mildew, all of that is stuff that Chris draws into the drawing package, as you see here. And then that really is the job of our props and dressing people to come in and dress the set after the scenic crew is done, to make it look exactly like it looks in the television show. We're going to take you into the kitchen, and it's getting even worse, and it's even more mildewy, and there's this weird mold growing everywhere. And then this is just a close-up of one particular drawing of the kitchen. So that's another example of what our props and dressing crew have to do. And then you're going to go into the bathroom, and it just progressively, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. So if you're a germaphobe, or you don't like mold, or you're pretty much screwed. Sorry. And again, this is a couple close-ups of what Chris has drawn in the drawing package with our production designers. So it just gets worse and worse and worse, and then eventually you're going to meet what is behind all of this, and I'll leave it at that. And last but not least, episode 5 is a story called Bad Wolf Down. It's a story that takes place in France. It's kind of towards around the time of Battle of the Bulge, so towards the latter part of World War II. There's an American troop that's kind of caught behind enemy lines during that battle, and they have to retreat to a French jail cell, and that's where all the action takes place. So for us, we have to create this French jail cell, and immediately they start picking up on some things that are not right inside this jail cell. They see these claw marks on the wall like you see here. The table's broken, there's a dead body in there, there's, again, more of these jagged claw marks, and you start wondering, well, what's going on inside this? And of course, I give this to Chris and his team, and they draw it all up, so this is another example. Now, every one of these drawing packages is probably like 100 pages, 100 pages of drawings. We're doing more mazes than ever before this year. In total, we're doing, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but we're doing 10 mazes this year, so 10 mazes times 100 drawings per maze, that's a lot of people drawing. And where do these people come from? Well, a lot of them are production designers from movies and television shows who then come over and they kind of moonlight for us in between productions. So we've got this staple of movie production designers that always like to come back and work with us on horror nights. And every once in a while, it's cool. Like last year, we actually had a guy that we had drawing our maze, and he goes, this was my movie. I worked on this movie. So we actually production designed the movie and production designed the maze. And eventually, where we're headed is these jail cells, these very, very dark jail cells. And something bad is inside there waiting for you. You just don't know what it is. But you see blood everywhere, and you see a full moon. And then you walk inside the jail cells, and then it just goes bad. And then once you've gotten through Bad Wolf Down, we're going to treat the maze just like the movie, just like the original film. It starts with the prologue, and it ends with the epilogue. So, if you remember the prologue to Creepshow, it's the dad is yelling at his son, how could you read this crap? Why do you waste your time on these comic books? And he threatens to throw the comic book away. So when you come out of the last scene of Bad Wolf Down, you enter that alleyway, you see that the kid's comic book, his precious Creepshow comic book, has been thrown in the trash. And you hear that creep laughter that you hear, in the movie, and the creep is somewhere. So there's, one last good jolt before you exit. And that's Creepshow. Show and tell. So this is the new creep that Greg designed, and this is our sculpt in progress of the creep we're creating for the maze. I brought some other goodies along to share with you guys. Is that okay? I could just leave. All right. One thing, I've done Midsummer Scream a whole bunch of times as long as there's been a convention. Chris and I have spoken at a lot of conventions. We always try to do something new or different or share an aspect of the event that we haven't shared previously. And there's a maze we're working on this year. It's called Holidays in Hell. And And what that maze actually really speaks to is graphic artists and graphic design and artwork. Because the inspiration for this maze actually was vintage postcards. That's where this all started. So what I thought I'd do is I'd showcase the work of one of our artists in particular. He's a guy named Lucas Colshaw. He's a fabulous artist. He's been with us for as long as I can remember. He designs every single character. Whenever you see our character renderings that get released for like the scare zones, that's Lucas. He does all of that. But Lucas is beyond just being able to be a great, costume designer, character designer. He's just a great artist in general. So this is the year we really let Lucas go wild, particularly with Holidays in Hell. If you guys remember, I think this is one of the first mazes we announced. You all familiar with Holidays in Hell? It was a scare zone last year. You guys saw that? It was, such a well-received scare zone that we decided to turn it into a maze. It's basically Holidays gone bad. And it's a maze we're doing with the EMD artist Figure. I don't know if you guys know Figure's music. He's been a big part of Horror Nights for years and years, so I called up Figure and said, this would be cool if we worked together this year, and we designed a maze that featured your music as well. And like I said, it was inspired by postcards. I don't know about you guys, but vintage postcards, particularly like Victorian era greeting cards and postcards, freak me out. They're just creepy. Jesus, look at it. Where is it? Oh, there it is. Look at Santa. Hello. Hello, boys and girls. The kid holding the turkey. I don't know what kids, what their psychological state was in Victorian times, but it couldn't have been good. So I started designing this maze just by pulling tons and tons and tons of vintage postcards and using that as inspiration. And then for the facade of the maze, we knew we were going to be starting with New Year's Eve. And I wanted to design the facade like a big, giant postcard. And I pulled this is actually an old vintage Victorian era kind of postcard. And I thought this was really cool, but I gave it to Lucas and Chris, and they turned it into this. So this is actually the facade. Where you see the big circle, that's a video element. We're doing the clock as a video element that changes. So this is Old Lang Syne, as remixed by Figure, and you're seeing the clock do the countdown: 10, 9, 8, and when it gets to midnight, everything goes evil and the clock changes. And there's a lot of different characters. And for all of these, we tried to kind of set it in a specific time period. So for like this particular one, I just picked the year 1929. Because that's like when everything started to go to hell. Basically the stock market crash. It was kind of like the giddy heights of the golden, the Gilded Age of the Roaring 20s, and then we go into the Great Depression. So all of the characters that are out in front of this facade are kind of like dressed like 1920s people that would be going to a New Year's Eve ball, but they're all, of course, skeletons and corpses. And of course, we have Father Time out here as well. I mentioned our props and dressing team. We have this off-site facility where we build all this stuff while we're waiting to get into the mazes. I just think it's funny. I'm just going to read this because I took this picture and then I went, heads, teeth, digits, guts. They have shelves organized by heads, teeth, severed fingers, guts. So these are static figures that are in a tableau when you first come into the maze. But where we're going to take you, it's Chris. See, he did make it after all. We decided to set New Year's Eve in a haunted nursery. Whenever I do research for nurseries, and I've done a few creepy nurseries over the years, I always end up back at Chernobyl. It's like every time I'm doing visual research, there's a particular nursery in Chernobyl that's been there for, since the accident in the 80s, and it's slowly just rotted away, and all the dolls are still there, and all the stuffed animals. You guys seen this? It's the creepiest damn thing in the world. So I used that as our inspiration, but I knew that I also wanted, like, murals painted on the wall, like children's literature murals. And again, I went back to my research. These are just some of the images I pulled that are, existing children's literature images that were designed to really screw children up, obviously, right? I'm gonna show these to my kids. Mother Goose, look at her. Is that supposed to be soothing to a child in any way, shape, or form? Look at that hellacious thing riding that evil giant goose. And then, the blackbird in the tree that's as big as the child, just staring at him like, I want to eat you. So I gave these images to Lucas, and I'll share with you some of the things he came up with for the murals you're going to see as you're going through this haunted nursery. So this is obviously a riff on Hansel and Gretel. This is all original artwork, hand drawn by Lucas. It's amazing. I particularly like this one. There you can see he's riffing, but what's clever about it is he's got all these hidden jokes I've noticed in his illustrations, and some of them took me a little bit of time. I'm like, look, there's Jack on fire, and there's Jill with her pail, and obviously, he took the Mother Goose idea and ran with it. I love these. These should be like t-shirts or, a calendar or something. Obviously, Little Miss Muffet and the cow jumping over the moon. But I love the way Lucas thinks and the way, these aren't things I didn't write in the treatment. And the cow must have all of the cuts of meat labeled on him. This is just stuff Lucas comes up with. But it's absolutely gorgeous stuff. So this maze features a lot of really cool artwork. Easter, for example, it's one badass Easter bunny. I hated Easter as a child. I just hated it. I did a haunted house once on Good Friday in my parents' house. And just my mom's a Catholic theologian, author of 9 books, and she just we're getting ready to go to church, and she's like, "You're what?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing a haunted house." It's like, "It's Good Friday," and I'm like, "Well, seemed like a good idea." Luckily, it wasn't Easter themed, but I grew up in the 70s as a kid, and I remember I grew up in Hacienda Heights and Whittier in that area. Yay! The Pointe Hills Mall, where they filmed Back to the Future? Yeah, that was I worked in that toy store when they were filming Back to the Future, so that was the first set I officially crashed in my young life. But they would always have an Easter photo op, back in the 70s when we were kids, and your parents, they dressed you up, and they drag you to meet a giant frickin' bunny, It's the most, and you guys have gone online and you've seen all those pictures of, all the pictures of kids just screaming bloody murder because mom and dad plopped them down on the lap of a giant freaky bunny, That was the inspiration for this scene. We wanted to make you feel like you were going to an Easter bunny photo op in a mall in the 70s. Because nothing could be scarier than that. And of course that means we needed a giant Easter egg basket. Some guy in our prop crew just made this. I just showed up one day and I went, oh, look at that. You're quite skilled with whatever you made that out of, it might be wood, I'm not even sure. And of course we needed giant Easter eggs, and all sorts of bad things are coming out of these Easter eggs. But we wanted that classic tableau, the Easter bunny, and these are all, behind the scenes pictures. None of this stuff's finished. I'm just showing it to you because I felt like it. The screaming child sitting on the lap of the Easter bunny. And then this is when they were just starting to set it up, and I walked into our offsite facility and I was like, oh my God, I'm in love. This is great. Do you guys remember last year we did Terror Tram? We did Hollywood Harry. Yeah. Do you remember his secret lair, his little serial killer lair? That's it. We work in a place that looks like a place a serial killer would hang out. That was literally where I shot it right there. So of course you're gonna go into this nightmarish Easter bunny, photo op from the 1970s and be attacked by the Easter bunny. What I did with Figure is I wrote kids songs for every one, almost every single one of these holidays. I wrote a little ditty, and I made the terrible mistake of I don't know if most of you guys know, I live in Ireland now. I have the longest commute in the history of this industry, 6,000 miles to be here today, and then flying tomorrow. But so I write everything there, and then I go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth throughout the year. So I hadn't seen this, and I walked in, and I was like, oh my God. And it gave me this idea. I'm like, I'm gonna write like songs. I'm gonna write like little kid songs, creepy little kid songs, and have Figure, work with me, and we'll do the music that way. So I wrote like this little Easter Bunny song, and it's all about him taking his bat and, hitting the kids on the head. And I was singing it, practicing in the house, and then to my great horror and dismay, my 4-year-old and my 6-year-old daughters were like going around, with this baseball, start singing it, and my wife's just looking at me going, you taught them that song? No? They're just really good at picking up stuff. 4th of July. Fireworks safety. Of course, that's the first thing that comes to mind when you're thinking about doing a scary 4th of July scene. And again, that classic roadside fireworks stand, that you find out in the middle of nowhere, maybe in the Midwest or somewhere on Route 66. That's the idea here. But they like sell cigarettes and fireworks. So it's just a really bad combination. So they set fire to everything. Everything's blowing up. It's very patriotic themed. But that meant, I don't know if you realize this, but like, I can't just take a product, like if we're doing a scene with a bunch of fireworks, I just can't take like some fireworks box and put it on the set. Everything under the sun these days is copyrighted, right? So that means our graphics team have to design fake products, and they've been doing this for years. These are their fake fireworks brands that don't really exist, like the Mauler. But again, I just love the fact that these guys are so creative, and what's great about getting to work with so many talented people is they bring to the event all sorts of creativity that we didn't even think of. I'll show you a couple more. All of the scenes in this maze are kind of set up by these postcards or these graphics. So that's our Halloween one, and one of my personal favorites, Thanksgiving. My favorite character in the whole event last year was Turkey Lurkey. That evil turkey dressed in a pilgrim costume. I just thought that was awesome. So what we did for his scene is it's kind of like that Norman Rockwell Thanksgiving painting, that classic painting of the family all gathered, and there's mom and dad and grandma and Aunt Susie and etc. And there's grandma. Because grandma's dead, Aunt Susie lost her head. And it's true, they did. This is the prop guys. This is what we call roughing it out. So they're just setting bodies down. None of this is finished. And then Chris or myself comes through, mostly Chris, being the art director. And then he kind of goes, okay, yeah, good with that, good with that. No, I don't like that body. Get rid of that one, swap it out. But my idea is that the turkeys would take their revenge, as they surely have every right to do. We've been eating them for millennium. And they would kill everybody having dinner, but they would kill them with the implements of that dinner and with anything they found on the table. So, they stab people to death, of course, with carving knives and forks and that type of thing. But I don't know if you noticed, but Grandma's throat has been slashed with a wishbone, stuck in her throat. I wanted one guy, drowned in a Jell-O mold. So our prop guys actually, made Jell-O, which is pretty amazing. And it's just all the crazy stuff these guys have to create. All right. So that's a little bit on maze graphics and art. I thought what I'd do before we get to our trivia question and giveaway and everything is, we announced the scare zones recently. I don't know, does everybody know we announced our scare zones? Okay. So these are all original this year. I think we only released one piece of art maybe for each of these. So I thought I'd share some of the artwork we created for these characters. And if you're good, if you're very, very good, I'll show you some makeup sculpts. Is that cool?